Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Carlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. Still ongoing with that fucking outage from fucking Spectrum. As the CEOs that whoever it is that isn't doing a good job reaching this negotiation, until they fix this deal, they can bite my shiny metal ass. As Rodriguez would say, because my grandmother she watches a lot of she likes watching baseball, right? Even though she's a Met fan, she'll watch whatever game she finds on, right? I remember she could not find the Sunday night game, and I had to tell her that, yeah, unfortunately, this whole deal, stuff I haven't explained to her why she couldn't find that Sunday night game. I think it was between the Astros and the Yankees, and it was black. I had to trying to tell her that it was blacked out, that the cable company is not letting her watch it. Was kind of sad.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, man. You know, me and you were talking about this before we came on air, and it's just a shame that the people that these companies claim to care about and claim to service their areas and everything, they could care less what these people, were looking forward to watching and get, I mean, just a simple thing like your grandma just wanted to watch Sunday Night Baseball. But because these billion-dollar companies are in a pissing contest right now, she can't watch something as simple as Sunday Night Baseball. I mean, look, you see me decked out in my Jets gear. If I had Spectrum, like we discussed right before we went on air, I wouldn't be able to watch the Jets on Monday Night Football, against the Bills this coming up Monday, which I'm sure a lot of Jet fans are dealing with. I mean, luckily you have the option of going to a bar or maybe going to a friend's house or something like that. But for a lot of people, it's not that easy.
Exactly, and I'm giving Spectrum a warning. If this carries on to the hockey playoffs and the Rangers are in the playoffs, I will encourage everybody to pretty much Jocktober Spectrum and ESPN until a deal is reached.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they deserve it. It's an absolute joke, and you just got to hope that eventually, which they always do, they sometimes drag the other side through the mud. They, there's endless back and forth of words.
Yep. Another thing it's affecting, not only that, of course, it'll affect me, of course, if it's when if a Giants game is on a Monday night. It also affects anyone who wants to watch the wild card round of the MLB playoffs if this drags on long enough. Also, it drags on anybody who, I'm not really into tennis, but I know plenty of people who do love tennis. There are people that can't watch the U.S. Open because of this. It's also not only
true.
affects TV networks that are also run by that same company, and it affected FX. I had to, and the only reason I did this is because unfortunately I was shut out of access to it because of the Spectrum outage. I had to pirate the last two episodes of the season. I had to pirate the season finale of What We Do in the Shadows, which by the way is a very hilarious show if you ever get to watch it.
I've heard it was good. I haven't actually seen it yet.
Yeah, it's about a group of vampires that's been living for like years. It's a comedy. It's done documentary style. It's a good show. The Guillermo character is my favorite character in that show, by the way.
Very cool. Now, Dan, let me ask you before we move on. When you are in the position where the only way you can watch something is that you have to pirate it, like you said. What is your method of pirating it?
I can't. Unfortunately, I'm not going to say this because I don't want to. I don't want anyone who's been blocked out of watching the season finale of What We Do in the Shadows because of this.
Okay, well, let me ask you this: is it a website that you go to, or is it like a something that you download?
It was a website.
Okay, okay, good. We'll leave it at that. We don't want copyright people coming after us. So we'll leave it at that. But okay, very cool.
Yeah, and this was only because I was blocked out of anything of I was blocked out of my access to it because of a pissing contest between two companies.
Yeah, $2 billion companies, man. And the
Yeah,
only people that are losing in this situation are guys like us that just have, that are in a position which a lot of people don't even have the option to change, is that you're stuck with Spectrum whether you like it or not.
yeah. There's some. I yeah, exactly. The only other option. Yeah, there's some places that maybe gives you a choice that like some areas might be wired for Verizon Bios. You could go with that. I wouldn't even go near DirecTV because who wants to lose signal when it's in pouring rain?
Yeah,
Plus,
when I lived in California, I had DirecTV, and I was not a fan.
yeah, I'm sure you hated that when it was raining.
Oh yeah, or if it got cloudy.
Yeah, yeah, we actually tried that out for a year before my mom switched back to what's down on the Spectrum. But what happened was during that year or so, it was the worst when it rained, and then of course the snow. I think you had to like wipe the snow off the dish. At least when it snowed, you could wipe the snow off the dish. And I joke, they says, am we gonna have to put a blow dryer on hold the blow have some dryer off the dish because I was able to somehow wipe the snow off of that to watch. I think this was 2006. That one year, it was 1 year we had DirecTV, about 1 year, and I was able to wipe the snow off the dish in order to save myself from being deprived of watching the Daytona 500 that year. But I actually heard since that 1 year I had to suffer with DirecTV. I heard that DirecTV has been dropping channels left and right. So it's been gotten to be a worse product. But yeah,
Yeah, it's true, man.
some
So
places you could get Vios, but not every area is wired for Vios. I heard a lot of places in the South you can't even Vios isn't available in some places in the South. They're not like wired or something. So pretty much because so there's like they gotta go through they go through Spectrum. But yeah, that sucks how these companies are this pissing contest between Spectrum and Disney Corp, which owns ESPN, ABC, and I think they own and I think FX is affected by this. You're locked out of the shows you like. Anything you like on those channels, you're locked out. You're locked out on.
yeah, it's true, man. It's very true. So we'll we started this episode in the weeds, and we got a nice little rant out about the Spectrum. So Spectrum, just so you know, you're on the list.
Yeah,
We're watching you.
exactly. Spectrum. Here's a one finger salute for you, Spectrum, and
A little sign language.
and Disney Corp until you reach an agreement to give me back my the channels and everything I watch on those channels.
There you go. All right, a little flip of the bird, and we'll keep it moving here. As Dan, I'm looking here to my left, and our Metropolitans just grabbed a 2-0 lead against the Nationals right now. So I guess that's as good a place to start as ever. We'll get into a little bit of the football and do our picks a little bit later on. But yeah, what we're gonna do is start with the Mets here. So get right here. All right. Now, the Mets over the weekend, they took 2 out of 3 from the Seattle Mariners. They've been playing a little bit better baseball. They crushed the Nats yesterday, and 11-5, and then took they took the early lead today, 2-0, in the top of the fifth inning. But what are your feelings on the Mets right now, Dan? Do you like? Are you beyond caring at this point, or are you like seeing a bit of these young kids they've been playing with the addition of Ronnie Mauricio over the last week?
I'm watching this. Believe me, I'm watching. I'm always watching the last out. I have to say, I like what I'm seeing in these young players. They're finally putting them in the lineup and finally letting them see what they got. I mean, they finally called up Ronnie Mauricio. It's about time. And so far he's looking great. Hopefully he can keep this up into next year. But like I said, next year is going to be the big test that those first couple of weeks of the season when we see these guys actually playing when they're actually trying to play for something.
Yeah, exactly. And they had I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
But I'm liking that they're finally giving these guys a chance to get their feet wet.
No doubt about it, man. And that's the key word, especially with Mauricio too, is getting their feet wet. That's why I thought it was imperative to get Mauricio up, at least a few weeks earlier than the Mets did it. But at least they gave him a full month. They called him up on September 1st, pretty much was his debut. And, so he's going to get a full month in the bigs just to get his feet wet, like you said. And I think that's exactly what the kid needs. He was not one of the guys that came up at the end of last year like Vientos, like Beatty, and like Alvarez did. But now he gets his crack at it this year. And speaking of Alvarez too, Alvarez had a very interesting day yesterday. If you saw, he hit a bomb of a 3-run home run. He had a big double, and he also stole a base. So Francisco Alvarez actually became the Mets' first rookie to homer, double, and steal a base in the same game since Darryl Strawberry in 1983. So almost 40 years, just about a week short of 40 years since the last Met rookie did that. So, when you look at Alvarez's stats, I mean, the batting average isn't going to blow you away. But in about 100 games this year, the guy's hit 23 home runs and driven in over 50 runs. So I think the Mets we got a pretty good look at this kid this year, and I like what we see. I think that this is only the tip of the iceberg for Francisco Alvarez.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like Alvarez is already the tip of the iceberg. I think we've already got established next year. We already know who our catcher is going to be next year. I feel maybe that we might have one heck of a nice little young infield there. That's a nice little young athletic infield there, and that we haven't had this kind of an infield in years. So I'm excited about this.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. There's all the pieces there to have a really good, really young core that they have. And you know what, though? You mentioned the infield, and two pieces that the Mets have had in the infield for the last couple of years has been Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso. And both of those guys are playing really well. I heard some stories with Lindor that, if you noticed, Lindor doesn't have the crazy hair anymore. He's not doing all these flashy things and everything. Apparently, Francisco Lindor had a talk with his father when he started off this year. Like him and Pete really didn't start the year off good at all. And that was a big reason for the Mets struggling. I think a really big chunk of why the Mets struggled earlier this year was, the up and down nature of Verlander and Scherzer, although they were the least of the Mets' worries, in my opinion. The bigger factors was Tyler McGill and David Peterson and Carlos Carrasco all being terrible and not getting the best out of Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso early on. Now, both those guys have really turned it on. And like I was saying about Lindor, apparently he had a conversation with his father where his father was pretty much just like, hey, just go back to playing baseball. Don't try to be, this flashy New York shortstop, Francisco Lindor. Be the guy that you were in Cleveland. You know, get get your hair cut. Enough of this colored hair nonsense. You know, so apparently his dad kind of said, just go back to the basics. And that's what Lindor has done over the last month or two. And the results are there, man. But Francisco Lindor right now is on pace to have a 30-30 season for the Mets, something that they haven't done since the days of Howard Johnson and Darryl Strawberry. So to get that production out of him with his bad start, that's a huge plus, right, Dan?
Yep, correction. I think the last time a Met had a 30-30 season was David Wright in 2007.
Yes, you're right. You're right. That's a good point. But I mean, you're right. And to think that since the days of Hojo and Straw, it's only been done one time. And that just goes to show, I mean, look, it takes a certain type of player, a certain dynamic type of player to put together a season like that. You know, people have been wowing, and rightfully so, at the fact that Ronald Acuna became the first player to have a 30-60 season. Now, I guess you could kind of keep ramping it up as much as you want, but 30 home runs and 60 stolen bases, that's a phenomenal feat. But hey, 30 home runs and 30 stolen bases is a phenomenal feat too. So Francisco Lindor going out there, providing the defense he has, and boy, I don't know if you saw the other night. I believe it was against Seattle, and Julio Rodriguez hit an absolute shot right at Francisco Lindor. I believe it was like 108 miles an hour. And Lindor corralled that in with no problem and flipped it. I mean, he acted like the Ozzie Smith, the pro's pro of being shortstop. And, I've always really enjoyed watching Lindor play defense. But I feel like over the last couple of weeks, along with his offense, he's taken every part of his game to the next level. And I know a lot of people are going to say that it's garbage time for the Mets. There's no pressure. Nobody's here. Yeah, okay, that's true. It's true. They traded away the guys, and they're not really playing for anything, even though they're 7 games out of a wild card spot right now still. You know, I understand they're probably not going to make it. But, hey, they're still alive technically. But, I mean, hey, it's great to see this out of Lindor. Either way, right, Dan? I mean, the fact that our among the highest paid players we have, and one of the guys that we rely on the most is producing, is a good thing, right? I mean, I can't sit here and act like it's a bad thing that even though the Mets are out of it right now, that he's coming alive. You want to see him produce and then carry it over to next year.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully he can carry this. He can carry this into next year. It's gonna go back. Yeah. I'm hoping we do the right thing with the pitching. And listen, we don't need to be obsessed with, losing a draft pick here. All right. Let's face it, the best pitchers usually are the ones that are in their first free agent contract. Right. We've had enough of these. The second contract usually isn't always the good. Usually is always the big question mark. Yeah, we need to go after the top shelf pitching here. I feel that's going to be the big difference between us having the season we hope to have next year and not, is the pitching. And while we're at it, maybe some bullpen help here.
Yeah, they definitely need bullpen help, no doubt about that. And the pitching, man, it always comes down to, look, let's look back at the 2015 team. That pitching was built from the ground up with, aside from Noah Syndergaard and Bartolo Colon, you had Matt Harvey, Jacob deGrom, Steven Matz coming in. Obviously, Syndergaard playing a big role, and even though he wasn't drafted by the Mets, he was developed by the Mets. So, I mean, you had the core of that rotation was all homegrown guys, like you mentioned earlier, on their first contracts. And hey, the Mets got to get back to that. And that was one of my big criticisms of the prospect haul, I guess if you want to call it that, that the Mets got back for trading Scherzer, Verlander, and the others, because they didn't get any pitching back aside from guys that don't have much upside. And so while I'm cautiously optimistic about some of the guys the Mets got back, like you mentioned, Dan, pitching is what's going to have the Mets back in the promised land. And the promised land is the playoffs and then the World Series. So, hey, we got a lot to figure out until then. And, let's just keep our fingers crossed that Billy Epler, Steve Cohen, and whoever they bring in, David Stearns, whoever it is, get the Mets in the right path because, they have a good core. They just got to find a way to round this roster out. And
but yeah, they need to go after the and also really much season left, but I just feel that Edwin Diaz needs to get over that hurdle to get that feet wet again in a big league mound. Because I just don't want to see Edwin Diaz going to spring training not pitched in a game at all since last year.
Oh yeah, and I do agree with you. But one thing I would also say is, I saw them pitching, or I saw him having a bullpen session the other day. He said he was throwing between 93 and 95, and I thought that was great. I just hope that they don't rush him, because if he has, an injury again, man, that's going to be a nightmare. So I just hope that, they don't push him too much. If his body, it is ready for him to come back in a couple of weeks near the end of the season, okay, that's cool. If not, you know what? Maybe they'll go out and have him throw a little winter ball, just to get that arm right again for spring training next year. But yeah, no, I agree with you though. I would love to see him out there. I just worry about him re-injuring himself.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I gotta say, I think about Edwin Diaz. What I think goes in his favor is that his arm wasn't injured.
Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true. That's definitely a big thing he has in his favor too. You're right. It's not like he's coming off Tommy John. It's it was whatever a leg or a knee injury. But for a pitcher, especially a guy like him that throws 100 miles an hour, his big powerful legs and those knees are a big part of his game. So I just hope that the Mets are doing the right thing, and I expect them to. I expect them to. But before we move on from baseball, Dan, I did want to point out that we were talking about the Mets and the little bit of a roster shakeup, bringing up guys. The team right across town, the Yankees, did the same thing, and they're getting some pretty decent results. I'm actually starting to see some insane Yankee fans think that the Yankees might end up going on a run to make the playoffs, which, I guess that would be fun to see, especially for these Yankee fans who've been waiting for it all year. But hey, the Yankees have, went down. They swept the Astros in Houston. The kid Jason Dominguez looks pretty good. Austin Wells looks pretty good. The kids seem to have invigorated the clubhouse a little bit. You heard a couple of the vets like Giancarlo Stanton and Judge talking about how it seems like these kids are just so full of piss and vinegar, really, where they're just inspiring the rest of the team to pick up their play a little bit and play with a little bit more of that love and passion of the game that maybe the Yankees had back in 2017 when they had a younger, higher ceiling team. But maybe they lost that a little bit over the last couple of years, especially with some of the guys they imported, like Josh Donaldson and other others like him. So that's something that the Yankees have to keep in mind right now. They're winning 4-1 in Detroit, so they're looking to keep that winning streak going. But what do you think, Dan? It's good to see, even though both New York teams are pretty much out of it and playing meaningless games. It's good to see these young kids coming up and making an impact, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm seeing both teams. I just feel we're going to be seeing a situation, hopefully, where both teams are going to be playoff contenders next year.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And I just looked at the Yankee box score real quick too, and believe it or not, Jason Dominguez has hit another home run for the Yankees. So, man, just think about it. I mean, it's funny to me because Ronnie Mauricio ripped it up in AAA all year, and I would still hear people saying, "Oh, well, don't trust the numbers. Let him get more games under his belt." And I understood that. I understood that. You want him to be a well-rounded prospect and get as many at bats as he needs at the AAA level. But man, when you look at that and how he's come up to the major leagues and has hit the ground running, you say, "Wow, maybe the Mets did the right thing." But then you look across town at the Yankees, who brought up Jason Dominguez. Now let's get this out of the way. Jason Dominguez was having a pretty decent year in Double A. Then, about 2 weeks ago, the Yankees promoted him to AAA for the first time, where he played 8 games. He hit 444 and drove in 10 runs. He didn't hit a home run, but he saved those home runs for the majors because now, in his first week in the majors, he's got 3 home runs. He's hitting 300, and he looks fantastic. I mean, it's just so funny how these things work out sometimes,
I just feel like it was about time that the Mets maybe should have called him up earlier. I mean, I feel like he was doing everything you could possibly do already, and like he had already shown he could handle AAA pitching. And I just felt like at the time he needed to be brought up and get acclimated to major league pitching. It was like the
Oh
only
yeah,
way
no doubt about.
we could really know what we got is him face
Yeah,
actually pitching, and it was just wasting talent down there in the AAA. It looked like.
yeah. Well, I mean, what about Dominguez? Like we were just talking about too, making the jump from Double A.
Yeah, I think that may have been a smart on the Yankees part. I mean, if you get, I mean, you get. I feel like he's already shown enough facing Double A pitching. I feel like Double A you're facing players on the up and up. The Triple A, it's mostly a lot of like players bouncing back and forth. Sometimes you're facing pitchers that are bouncing back and forth, so it's like it was at the time like really in the big leagues where you really knew what you got.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true, man. Very true. So fun things going on in New York on the baseball side. Even though the teams are out of it, we could still have a good time. There's always time for baseball in New York, but the scene is about to be split a little bit because tomorrow night, or tonight, if you're watching this on the day that this episode debuts on YouTube and across our podcast networks, um, it'll be the NFL season debuting upon us as the Chiefs and the Lions open up things tomorrow. So we are going to give our NFL 2023 picks. This is going to be fun, Dan. I guess because we didn't really expect much last year. We didn't do our pick segment for the NFL last year, but we're going balls to the wall this year, and we're saying, the Giants are going to be good, the Jets are going to be good. So let's jump right in, and we're going to kick things off then with the NFC East. So take it away, Dan. You got the Giants, and I got the Eagles. Tell me why the Giants are going to win the division.
I just feel like the Giants have been. I feel like during this off season, after they were facing a tough team. I feel like the Eagles have been the team that's been like their kryptonite, and I just feel like they're pumped to just finally beat these guys. And I just feel like though it's going to be a nail biter that's going to could go down to the last week of the season against the Eagles.
Yeah,
I just
no
feel
doubt about it.
going to barely edge out the Eagles in that last week of the season. It's going to be a dogfight for the division.
Oh, you're absolutely right about that, man. And like you said, it's definitely going to come down to the end of the year because 2 of the last 3 games the Giants and Eagles play are against each other. So they're definitely going to be ready for those final 2 out of 3. it could be for the division championship between these two teams. You never know, especially the way the Giants played last year. I think that the Giants, Cowboys, and Eagles are all going to be in the mix. But for me, the Eagles are just such a loaded team. Um, to me, I could make the case that the Eagles are in better position to have a better regular season at least than the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, you could make the case that the Eagles are the best regular season team on paper this year. They're a well-coached team. They just paid their QB Hurts. They got probably the deepest D line in the league. Their defense is smothering, as the Giants found out in the playoffs last year. I'll tell you this, though. I think this is the year the Giants do grab a game from them in the regular season. It's been a couple of years since then. I think the Giants are going to beat them at least once this year. But I do expect the Eagles to, for some reason, for me, I see the Eagles being like 13-4 or 14-3. And I see the Giants being like 10-7 or 11-6. So I think the Giants are going to be in it all year, but I think the Eagles are just going to be a little bit better.
Of course, I can tell you one thing. Normally, Christmas could be a little peaceful. This is now going to turn into a bloodbath on Christmas between Giants fans.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it, man. This is like, sibling rivalry type stuff, and just that deep bad blood between these two teams. And it's going to come to a head. I mean, especially, like, let's just say that when we go into that Christmas game, that the Giants and Eagles are tied or separated by a game in the standings. Oh man. Those are going to be games to watch. No doubt about it.
Yep. Exactly. And I can tell you, I don't mind a montage of me celebrating the Giants beating the Eagles on Christmas Day and have that song by Trans-Siberian Orchestra in the background.
Yeah, I can see it already.
Yeah, which I forget that they even exist. Trans-Siberian Orchestra even exists all year long. Because ever hear them is on Christmas Day. Everybody's clamoring for those tickets to see Trans-Siberian Orchestra at the Nassau Mausoleum, or I think they do that concert at the UBS Arena now. I forgot if they still do it at the Coliseum or they do it at the UBS Arena now. I think last year they did it at the UBS Arena. I don't know. My sister.
I think they did. I think they do it at both now, actually.
Yeah, because I remember it was one of those venues in Long Island my sister went to. She freaking loves going to that concert every year, apparently.
Oh my God. All right, let's keep it moving along here. So we got the NFC East. Dan took the Giants. I took the Eagles. We'll keep it moving on to the NFC North, where Dan has the Vikings coming back out of it and winning at least their second consecutive division title. I'm not sure if they won the year before. Oh, no, the Packers did. Okay, so 2 straight division titles Dan has for the Vikings, and I have the Lions coming up, winning the division for the first time since 1992. Yes, that's right, 1992, the Barry Sanders-led Detroit Lions. That was the last time that they had a division winner. Dan, what are your thoughts? Why do you think that the Vikings are going to stay on top of this division?
I feel like they have some contender experience. I also feel like the NFC North might be a very weak division this year. Also, I got to say one thing. Speaking of 1992, when you said about the last time the Detroit Lions won the division, that was also around a time when Crystal Pepsi was a big deal, and Mark Wahlberg was looked at as a pop star back then.
That's a good point. That's definitely true, man. And
would have thought this guy that just showed up at some pop video in 1992 with his freaking shirt off, hitting a punching bag, was going to become a big mega star in movies.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. The lead singer of Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch taking Hollywood by storm. Nobody would have thought so in 1992, but that became a reality just a few years later. You're absolutely right about that. And so yeah, what? So Dan, you are betting on that combination of Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson keeping things together this year, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just know. One of my Instagram peeps says speech impediment man might be happy about that prediction.
Shout out to speech impediment man. We got to get him on the show actually because he's a big football fan and speech impediment man's a very funny guy, good guy.
That guy might be one of the biggest Vikings fans I know.
Him and Greg Giannotti from WFAN is also a big Vikings fan as well.
Yep, and I remember this comedian. I used to see her in a lot of podcasts. I forgot her. I think her name was A. Marie. I forgot her last name, but I used to see her in a lot of comedy podcasts. She's also a big Vikings fan.
Yes, you're right, A. Marie. I used to see her all the time around Compound Media. That's a good point. Yeah, I think she still does with some stuff with Chrissy Mayer too. So yeah, shout out to A. Marie too. She was always very funny and a very good Vikings fan too. You're right about that.
Yep, and I have to say though, she's pretty tall in person.
Is she really? I've never met her.
Yeah, she's tall.
Wow. Okay. And yeah, so when we'll just real quick on the Lions. The reason why I'm picking the Lions too. I mean, look, it's a hot pick. I understand. I'm not coming out of nowhere. A lot of people have picked the Lions this preseason, but I gotta tell you, I'm a big fan of the Lions secondary. I think Aiden Hutchinson is one of the most underrated defensive players. I think look, Sauce Gardner was a freak last year, and won Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think Aiden Hutchinson would have been in that mix if it wasn't for that great class. But I mean, look, the guy was getting sacks, the guy was getting interceptions and turnovers and everything. Big fan of him, and big fan of Jared Goff too, man. I think the Lions are set up for a nice season. So shout out to the Lions, shout out to Detroit, and shout out to probably our favorite Lion fan, Dave Landau. So
Yep.
Dave Landau and his Lions will get that division championship.
Exactly. We can't forget Crispy Jones, the Mr. Detroit himself, Dave Landau. I cannot see any images or anything of Detroit without being reminded of our good friend Dave Landau.
Absolutely, the king of Detroit. So, and if the Lions have a hell of a year too, or at least get off to a good start, that's another guy we should get on is Dave Landau to talk about that because it'd be cool to talk to a real Lions fan about that. So, very cool, very cool. So we'll keep it rolling along here, Dan. 2 divisions in the NFC down, 2 to go. We'll pick it back up with the NFC South as Dan takes the Carolina Panthers, led by new head coach Frank Reich and rookie quarterback, whose name I forget at the moment, CJ Stroud. Is that the one, or is he in Texas? Either way. And I took the Saints. So Dan, let me know, why did you take the Carolina Panthers?
I don't know. I just feel it was kind of the NFC South was gonna be a so-so division. I feel like.
No, I agree with that, man, because you're definitely not wrong. The Falcons stink. The Buccaneers stink. The Panthers are so-so. But though, the reason why I took the Saints too is I think the Saints are flying under the radar. They have a pretty good team. I don't know about the defense, but I know that Derek Carr is going to be going there motivated. I mean, for a guy that was making big time money and got cut by the Vegas Raiders because things kind of fell apart there between him and the head coach, and the Raiders now brought in Jimmy G. But I think that Derek Carr is going to fit in well in the Saints. I think him playing indoors is going to help him out a lot. They have Chris Olave, who's a great wide receiver too. So I just like that combination there, and I expect the Saints, the non-Sean Payton led Saints, to be a competitive force this year in the NFC South. And even though I do agree with you that For the Panthers, though, I'm a big fan of Frank Reich as their head coach. So it would not surprise me if they had a surprising season too. So I do think that the top two teams in that division are probably the Saints and the Panthers. So with that, we'll keep it moving along. And a real easy one. I mean, a slam dunk. We don't even have to spend that much time on this one. But the NFC West, me and you both took the 49ers. The first time we've agreed, wholeheartedly on a division in the NFC. So we both took the 49ers. Aside from the obvious that we all know how well coached and deep this team is, what are some of the reasons why you went with the 49ers to continue their dominance?
I just feel like this team, I feel like they keep progressing year after year. And I just feel like they just have that contender experience you need to win a division.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it could be just that simple, right? I mean, I agree with you. I mean, they're well coached. They have, for the most part, the same cast of characters here. They just gave Nick Bosa the biggest defensive contract for a defensive player in the history of the NFL. So Bosa's back lock, stock, and barrel now. For the 49ers, the biggest question mark for them is, are you going to get a repeat performance out of Brock Purdy? And can you keep Brock Purdy healthy? And I think the answers for that are going to be yes, because no team makes it as easy for their quarterback as the 49ers. They have a great offensive line. They have great offensive weapons all around them with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, ton of other guys. So, I think I agree with you. The easy money is the 49ers out west. And with that, let's keep it rolling. Head over to the AFC. We'll start in the East. As once again, we agree on this one. The AFC East, Bobo is taking the Jets. I'm taking the Jets too. Dan, what's your reasons? Oh, there we go. Okay, Dan, so what's your reasons for taking the Jets here?
Well, a couple of reasons. I just feel like a lot of the players on this team, I feel like they're just ready to go to kick things up another level. Also, I feel that veteran presence of Aaron Rodgers just elevates this team to that playoff contender level.
Yeah, I agree, man. I mean, I think a combination. In my heart, I feel like the Jets could go 13-4 this year. To some people that I've seen the Jets as low as 7-10 this year. Some people saying that they're going to go 7-10 again. I don't think that's going to happen. 13-4 might not be the height they could reach. Maybe 11-6, maybe 12-5. But I think they're going to be a good team, and I think it's going to be coupled with the fact that the Miami Dolphins are way overrated. I cannot believe how overrated the Dolphins are. The Dolphins, in some polls, are listed as a top 5 team. Let's be honest. The Miami Dolphins are not even a top 10 team in the NFL. They're a decent team. They have some good pieces, no doubt about it. I don't think they're going to go, 4-13, but they're way overblown. I mean, we've only seen a few games of Tua Tagovailoa even being a good quarterback. I mean, and he's got to stay healthy too. So I think that the Dolphins are way overrated. I think the Bills are still a very good team, but I think they're more on their way down than on their way up. And when you look at the Patriots are going to have a good defense, but I'm not convinced the Patriots are going to be a playoff contender. So yeah, I agree with you, man. I think that the team that's going to come out of the East is the Jets, and we were talking about it being since 1992 that the Detroit Lions hadn't won a division title. Well, it's a little bit closer, but the Jets haven't won one since 2002. So I guess 2 is the operative number with these two teams, as the Jets now look to also get rid of one of the longest division, winless streaks and also a 13-year playoff drought. So a lot to put aside for the Jets if they're able to get rid of that. And as we keep moving along here, let's hit the NFC North. As Dan, you take the Bengals, and I totally understand that because the Bengals have been dominant there since Joe Burrow came on the scene. And I curiously took the Pittsburgh Steelers, who a lot of people are down on right now. So Dan, before I give my reasoning on the Steelers, why did you take the Bengals?
I just feel like the Bengals they seem to have stability in their coaching and their and a team wise. I feel like the Steelers just in this division just feel like maybe that they might be close, but they're still like little finding themselves. They're in like that couple of years, that post Roethlisberger, that post every year they were contenders kind of thing right now.
Oh yeah, and I totally understand that. I mean, to be honest, I'm sure a lot of other people would have even picked the Baltimore Ravens before going to the Steelers. Now, I still think the Bengals are going to be a very good team. I think the Bengals are going to make the playoffs, and it would not surprise me at all to see the Bengals back in the AFC Championship game again this year, even if they don't win the division. But for some reason, man, I don't know why. I just have a feeling with the Steelers, and a lot of times I would ignore that feeling, but there's a couple of things that lead me to say, you know what, maybe this feeling isn't all that crazy. Because first off, you have to look at three factors: the head coach, the quarterback, and the defense. And the head coach, I like the head coach. Mike Tomlin's a hell of a head coach. He always has the Steelers in the mix. He's never finished under 500, or that far under 500. It's close. He's always got his team right there, even if they start off bad. And hey, I like their defense too. They have a great defense. I think a lot of people underrate and forget about the Steelers' defense. And another thing too is that Kenny Pickett. I saw his NFL debut last year against the Jets, and he didn't look too good. But by the end of the season, Kenny Pickett took a couple of steps forward and looked like a much more serviceable quarterback. And not to mention, I liked what I saw from him in the preseason this year too. He looked like an even more polished quarterback than he did at the end of last year. So those are my reasons: the defense, the coach, and the young game managing quarterback. So that's my reason for taking the Steelers. I understand I'm going out on a limb. It would not surprise me at all if I'm wrong, but that's my little nod to Mike Tomlin. And as we keep it rolling along here, we'll head to the AFC South. As Dan, you took the hot pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson down there leading the charge. And I took the Tennessee Titans, the little more older and what a lot of people would consider on the downside of the AFC South. Before I move on, Dan, what's your reason for taking the Jaguars?
I just feel like there was just a young team. I just feel like this team has seemed to have a real explosive quarterback. Finally, I feel they're on the up and up to having at least a couple of years of being contenders.
Yeah, I definitely think you're right, man. The Jacksonville Jaguars are definitely one of those teams on the rise. We were talking about that with the Detroit Lions earlier, and we're going to talk about it right now with the Jaguars too. I mean, when you look at all the young talent they have, Trevor Lawrence, and not to mention too, don't forget they brought in Calvin Ridley too, who's looked fantastic. I think there's a really good shot that the Jacksonville Jaguars are a hell of a team this year. Especially with Doug Peterson too. A lot of people forget about Doug Peterson. He's the guy that won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles in Philadelphia, beating the Patriots. So, he's got to be a pretty decent coach to get those results, and to end up in Jacksonville with the number 1 pick in the draft, getting Trevor Lawrence. I think we've seen what Doug Peterson can do, and he's turned that team around. Now for the Titans, look, I'm a big fan of Coach Vrabel. I'm a big fan of Derrick Henry. I think they still have some pieces. I'm not a big fan of that division, and I just think that the coaching of Mike Vrabel is going to be the thing that leads the Tennessee Titans to the division championship. It's going to be close. It's going to be hard fought. Might be a 9 or 10 win division winner, but I think that's what we're going to get. And so the Tennessee Titans are my pick. Dan went with the Jaguars. Understandable on both sides. To keep it going, we'll head over to the AFC West, and that's another slam dunk one right now too. We both took the Chiefs. Dan, what do you like about the Chiefs?
I just feel the Chiefs are a team that's playing on another level. It's shades of the Tom Brady era Patriots. They've had years of not being bad teams, and all of a sudden somehow found a way, whatever their system, whatever, they've been able to develop great players, and let's face it, they got maybe, and I feel in this era, might be one of the elite quarterbacks of this era in Patrick Mahomes. So this team is going to noise this year.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could make the case that Patrick Mahomes, is already on his way to Canton, as he's the only quarterback right now that's active with more than 1 Super Bowl victory. So this is a stacked team. They have a hell of a defense. They have the amazing combination of Travis Kelce, who's a little banged up right now, but should be okay. And obviously Mahomes. They got to bring Chris Jones back in, and that situation's starting to get a little iffy. So you got to hope that they work that out, because the defensive line of the Chiefs completely changes when Chris Jones is on that. But yeah, I totally agree, man. I think it's stupid to pick against the Chiefs. Denver, I'm not really a big fan of that team. I think Sean Payton's a good coach, but I don't know how much he could get out of Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson's washed, like a lot of people think he is. The Raiders, I think the Raiders will be a little bit better than people think, but who knows? That season could be over by November 1st. And hey, it's the Chargers fly under the radar too. A lot of people forget about them, but they're going to be in the mix too. But I think the Chiefs have plenty to hold them off. And before we wrap this segment, Dan, we got our Super Bowl picks. That's right. It's September, and we're talking Super Bowl. And just to prove that me and you are the 2 biggest homers of all time, let's take a look at our Super Bowl picks. As Dan, Bobo's Super Bowl is the Giants and the Chiefs. Giants coming out of the NFC, man. I mean, to be honest, obviously we'll see my pick in a minute. I picked the Jets, believe it or not. And the Giants' path, you could make a case that the Giants' path to the Super Bowl is easier to the Jets, because the NFC is not nearly as stacked as the AFC is. So the Giants are going to have a slightly, especially if, who knows, maybe the Eagles get knocked off early and the Giants don't have to face the Eagles in the playoffs. Like, man, the Giants could have a much easier path to the Super Bowl than the Jets could.
Yeah, I just feel like the Giants feel like that. I feel like they're the sleeper pick. And I just feel like historically the Giants have their best seasons when they're just flying under the radar. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, I find myself taking another trip to the Canyon of Heroes after football season.
Exactly. So why would you bet against your Giants? I totally get it. Giants Chiefs. That's a pretty damn good Super Bowl, man. Now on my side, I got the Jets and the 49ers. And hey, the 49ers have gotten to the Super Bowl at least 2 or 3 times over the last 10 years. and they have not won one, and I expect that to be the same this year. Jets beating the 49ers, and let's just go with what the magician that the Jets brought in the first episode of Hard Knocks said. Jets 31, 49ers 21. Let's go. First Super Bowl since January of 69. Now that I have spoken that into existence, let's keep our fingers crossed.
Tell you is that if what you've been hoping for it to happen for years becomes a reality, are we gonna have to check your pulse to make sure you didn't have a heart attack in shock?
Yeah, pretty much. And not to mention, Dan, you're gonna have to track me down with a straitjacket because I'm gonna be losing my mind.
Yeah. But if that even looks like it's on the first step of happening, I might have to show up in wherever you're watching that Super Bowl with the defibrillator in case you end up in such a big state of shock.
You're absolutely right about that. I would definitely need as much medical attention as I could possibly get because I'm going to be out of my mind if that does come to fruition. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The 2023 picks for the Best Seat in the House podcast. We put it all out on the table, and either way, Dan, it's going to be a hell of a fun season.
Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you a little fact about me, Cramer.
Yeah.
I actually have been a CPR certified for quite a while, ever since high school. Because in one of my classes, they made us take the course, so I've re-upped that certification over the years. So I just to let you know, I do know CPR in case it's needed.
Very cool, very cool. I'm gonna have to have you with me wherever I am if the Jets actually do make the Super Bowl, because then you could save my life.
Just letting you know, I do know that. So,
I appreciate it, buddy.
how many people know about?
Exactly. It's always good to know somebody with CPR knowledge. No doubt about that, man. And yeah, I think with that, we're just about going to be winding it down right now as we're getting ready for week 1 of the NFL season to commence. Dan, before we get out of here, have any plugs for yourself?
Yeah. Of course, my plugs. You can follow me on. I guess everybody's calling it X now, so I guess it's on X. Bobo103NYC, Instagram Bobo718DK, and Daniel Curlin on YouTube. Gotta re-up, film some sketches, of course. Go and of course you could follow. You could also see me make appearances on various podcasts all over the place. In addition to, of course, here, of course.
Absolutely, man. So keep your eyes open for Dan. He's always doing something. As a matter of fact, if you're a fan of Eastside Dave, go to his Patreon and subscribe because there is some hilarious content from the most recent episode, which, by the way, we put a link to on our last episode. So if you want to see Bobo on the last episode of the Davey Mack Sports Program, you can check that out. But on Dave's Patreon, there is some great content of Bobo and Big A and Dave in the car, and it's worth the couple of dollars if you want to subscribe to Dave's Patreon, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. And it was really interesting living it, let alone you just seeing what it's like in person. It just saw some aspects of Dave that I never expected I'd see.
Very funny stuff. So do yourself a favor and check that out. Check out the latest episode of the Davey Mack Sports Program as well, where, by the way, Dave gave me a little shout out there at the end too, which was very nice too. And I echo the sentiments. Eastside Dave, I'm a gigantic fan of Eastside Dave. So thank you for the kind words too, Dave. I appreciate it. And yeah.
Exactly. I saw when they were reading some stuff in the comments there was kind of evidence that you were actually watching that episode live as I was there.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I always like to watch Eastside Dave, especially when you're on. So, I mean, come on. I got to support my guy right there. Come on. So,
one of these days, I got to bring you to one of those Davey Mack Sports Program tapings.
I would absolutely love that. Definitely one time. Hey, the next time Dave has an extra spot on the show, I'd love to hop on because one of the greatest sports shows out there is Davey Mac Sports Program. So shout out to Dave, shout out to Big A, shout out to Roy, shout out to all the boys over there, Bobby Tamburo. Once again, thanks for the shout out, guys, and thanks for Bobby for reading my comments, like Dan said too. So very cool stuff, very cool. And so with that too, that's just about going to do it for us today. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter or X, as Dan said, whatever you want to call it these days, at BSith_podcast. You can check me out on there at my last name, Cramer NY. And don't forget, we're also on Instagram, Best Seat in the House Podcast. And if we've earned it, give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube and Rumble as well. So once again, thank you everybody for tuning in here for episode 79 of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer. This is my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin, and we'll catch you next week, everybody.